everyone. Thank you for tuning in to us today for a group discussion, another group discussion from the Unity Church of El Cajon. I'm Susan Jarboe, and with me today are Linda Baker, Reverend Linda Burdett, Dr. Kristine Pass, and also Kathy Cronin. And you know us all from previous viewings of our discussions, and I'm sure my panelists will have a lot of good things to say today. Once again, before we begin, let's have a prayer. Our Heavenly Parent, Lord, help us to study and apply your wisdom to our lives each day. Help us make this session a discipline of the mind and heart, empowered by your Spirit, transforming us each day more and more into your likeness. Thank you for your tender mercy and love, ever leading us onward. Amen. My subject today, once again, comes from Richard Rohr, who's with the Center for Action and Contemplation. One of my study groups is reading a book of Richard Rohr's called The Way of Tears, and it's his most recent book, and it might be his last book, as I understand where he's headed. And so Richard Rohr is describing the path of tears as one that leads to sympathy with suffering and communion with reality. And he begins, are we the only animal that cries and sheds tears as an emotional response? It seems so, but what function do they serve for us? Jesus says we should be happy if we can weep. That's from Luke chapter 6. But why? Tears seem to appear in situations of sadness, happiness, awe, fear, and usually come unbidden. What is their free message to us and to those who observe them? Has humanity gotten the message yet? Whatever it is, it's surely a message too deep for words. In the first book of Virgil's Aeneid, line 462, the hero Aeneas gazes at a mural depicting a battle of the Trojan War and the deaths of his friends and countrymen. He's so moved with sorrow at the tragedy of it all that he speaks of the tears of things, lacrimae rerum in Latin. As Seamus Heaney translates it, there are tears at the heart of things, at the heart of our human experience. Only tears can move both Aeneas and us beyond our deserved and paralyzing anger at evil, death, and injustice, without losing the deep legitimacy of that anger. This phrase, the tears of things, has continued to be quoted and requoted in many contexts over the centuries. We find it on war memorials, in poetry, in the music of Franz Liszt, and in Pope Francis's encyclical letter, Fratelli Tutti. I myself remember it because of a haggard, bent-over Latin teacher who would often enter the classroom moaning lacrimae rerum several times before he began quizzing us. Because the phrase has no prepositions in Latin, it allows two meanings at the same time. Virgil seems to be saying that there are both tears in things and tears for things, and each of these tears leads to the other. Though translators often feel compelled to choose one or the other meaning, I believe the poet implies it is both. There's an inherent sadness and tragedy in almost all situations, in our relationships, our mistakes, our failures, large and small, and even our victories. We must develop a very real empathy for this reality, knowing that we cannot fully fix things, entirely change them, or make them to our liking. This way of tears and the deep vulnerability that it expresses is opposed to our normal ways of seeking control through willpower, commandment, force, retribution, and violence. Instead, we begin in a state of empathy with and for things and people and events, which just might be the opposite of judgmentalism. It's hard to be on the attack when you are weeping. Prophets and mystics recognize what most of us do not, that all things have tears and all things deserve tears. The sympathy that wells up when we weep can be life-changing too, drawing us out of ourselves and into communion with those around us. I'm going to be interested to hear what our panel has to say about this, and I want to just give you a brief note from my childhood and perhaps yours. One of the most embarrassing things you could ever be called was a crybaby. And so I learned to avoid tears at all costs. Okay, panel, please take this away.
Thank you, Susan.
Linda.
I love the subject of tears. I really do. I feel like tears reveal a person's pathway into their hearts. And once there, you're in sacred space along with the divine. I've always felt that. I feel like tears, it signifies the truth in a person. And that's why I've heard the question so many times. People ask, why do I cry when I pray? And that's because they're going into that place within themselves where they are there with the divine and they're speaking their truth. And with the truth comes the tears. And I'll tell you something else about tears. When you cry, think about the release of the stress in your system. It's healing. It's healing to cry. And we were born with tear ducts. They're not there just to clean our eyes. The emotions tied to them. So I guess I live by what my brother used to tell me when we were kids. He'd say, "You have built-in water sprinklers." So I live with that. Thank you. Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Linda. And thank you for bringing up the example of tears occurring while praying. I think that's a really interesting application of tears. Would someone else like to speak? Kristine, hello.
Hi. So for me, tears are the wellspring within. I find them occurring in happy moments as well as in the sad. And I really believe that this is the energy that yearns to be released one way or another, like I said, for happiness or for the sad. The quote, tears in things and for things, really struck me. I am reading a book by Chase Hughes. It's called the Behavioral Ops Manual. And in there, he talks about how we are rarely motivated or influenced by words. That what really, really gets to us is what gets into our deep brain. When we are talking to that which is the ancestral script or our life script. So those things that are kind of built into our DNA or are built into us because of our life experiences. And when we begin recognizing tears as energy, then we can look at, oh, okay, so this response came from, whether it would be the ancestral script or the life script, we can see which of these caused us to react and respond in ways that we have, which then helps us to be more attuned to the things that are motivating us, the things that are moving us, and be able to more accurately or quickly be able to find peace no matter what the situation is. So this whole idea of tears in things and for things has really landed for me, and I've really appreciated this. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristine.
So Susan, thank you for this topic about tears. At the very beginning, when you read about the fact that, only humans have, cry. And I can remember seeing my dog, shed tears when it lost its buddy, when the other dog had passed away. And and I've seen videos where, the animals go through a grieving period, and, maybe they don't have the tear ducts we do, but they sort of emote their tears in a way when they have a loss. They have that feeling. So we're not the only ones unique to this. However, with us, our tears are there, and they're there as a cleansing for the soul. I did a insight workshop several years ago, and when people were sharing and the tears would start to come, the facilitator would say, "That's just your soul cleansing." And sometimes it's even when it's joy, it's the soul is coming forth to say, this is such a heart-rendering moment or time of happiness that these tears come forth. And there's also the times that the tears come forth with our grief, with our sadness, with our insecurities. And Susan, when you shared about the thing as a child being a crybaby, nothing worse is being labeled that or called and teased about being a crybaby. I was a youngster. I mean, when I was very young, and I'd be watching a TV show, and the one that really comes to mind is when I'd watch Lassie, and Lassie was like hurt or something, and I'd just start bawling, and I get teased about this, and I was just so touched by these things that I took this in and just felt this type of thing. And I saw that just recently that brought me to tears was this brutal killing in Minneapolis of Alex. And what I felt, I was sharing with my husband, is I could just feel and imagine those last moments of his life, and tears just poured out of me, thinking, what was that like for him? How can, that I could feel those moments, those times. And it was sort of that aspect of having feeling for others, having that empathy, is that sometimes the tears come forth, and just sensing that. So many times for me, it's the feelings within, and there's times that I just feel very overwhelmed inside, that I just feel like I want the tears to come up, but they're not coming forth. It's like they're there, they're getting up to about this point, and then they stop, and it sort of is like, I just feel like when I can sit back and say, what is it that I'm feeling? What is the emotion that I have right now that's bringing that? And it's a different aspect. If we can look at that, our tears are there to give us a message. that they're there as they're talking to us. It's our soul's way of talking to us. And I appreciate this topic. I think Richard Rohr just writes such beautiful thoughts and shares those with us. So thank you for bringing him to this panel.
Thank you, Kathy. And your story of crying at Lassie, I I resonate with that. Um, Particularly stories about animals, like Old Yeller, if you remember Old Yeller, or the Three Lives of Thomasina. Um, yeah, I cry at those kinds of things too. And who do we have left? Last but not least, Reverend Linda.
Thank you. And again, really enjoyed the topic, and I'm totally enamored by the panel discussion. It's given me a lot to think about. Most of you know that I'm in recovery, that I'm a recovering drug addict and alcoholic. And while I was active in my disease, I did not cry. And I knew that tears were not a part of my repertoire. I couldn't call them up. I was so despairing and despondent. You'd think I'd cry all the time, but no matter how awful it was, I didn't cry. I didn't cry. And then, Kathy, I heard you say it's the Spirit's way of talking to you. Well, I wasn't listening to Spirit in any way, shape, or form. At that point, I had as many blocks between myself and God and higher power, whatever, that I wasn't listening. So that makes sense. After a couple of years in recovery, I started crying, and I cry at everything. I used to think they would do a hokey cue the crier, and that would be me, and the tears would just start coming down. And when I do that, you hear it in my voice, so I can't even pretend that I'm not doing it. What tears? It's obvious. I'm crying. And a dear friend of mine told me that your body cannot contain your spirit. And sometimes your spirit overflows the body. And those are what we recognize as tears. And I love that. And I live that. When that comes up, I don't apologize. I don't try and hide it. I just go right on with whatever I'm doing. And I'm honored that Spirit is moving through me. So I don't know if you got anything out of that, but that's all I've got on tears. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. And as you were speaking, I thought of two other comments I'd like to make. Um, One is a friend of mine who's a psychiatric social worker told me that sometimes antidepressant medications can suppress the tearful reaction. And I'm just putting that out there for whatever it's worth. It's certainly not any kind of diagnosis. The second thing I wanted to tell you was about my students. I used to teach college students, and we did a unit in my communication course on emotions. And every semester, I would ask the class, you know the feeling you get after a good cry? All of the women just lit up and said yes. They know that feeling. And it's always been such an interesting moment in the class to see that we have this shared response. And I always found it quite meaningful. Well, I'll stop chattering now. And I certainly hope you enjoyed this discussion. And if you'd like to let us know what makes you cry, please leave some feedback. We welcome all kinds of feedback. You can put it in the comments at the end, and we do read the remarks. If you think this discussion would be useful to other people, please feel free to pass the link on, and those people can also leave comments if they wish. If you enjoyed this discussion, for those of you who are not yet subscribers, you can subscribe to these panel discussions and you will be alerted when a new discussion is posted. So feel free to consider that. Also, if you have ideas for us, let us know. We all come up with our own readings and ideas for these panels, but we would be happy to pursue a particular idea or thought that you'd like to hear about. And if you have something you'd like to say, please consider joining us. Maybe you've got a subject or a topic where you'd really like to tell people about it or hear what we might have to say about it. We welcome one-time presenters, so you could come and present something, and that doesn't mean you're tied to the panel forever. Of course, we would love it if you were tied to the panel forever, but we're not expecting that. And at the end of this video, there's information on how to contact us. And so, as I said earlier, we would love to hear from you. And thank you again for tuning in.
Thank you for joining us, and let's stay connected and grow in spirit. We are on Facebook. Search for Unity Church of El Cajon and follow us and like our posts. You can reach us on YouTube at Unity Church of El Cajon. Please subscribe to our channel, watch our videos, and leave comments which can help us improve. We are on the web at unityofelcajon.org. Email or call our church office to receive our weekly newsletters, which lists all of our activities and opportunities to learn and grow together.